A video ditch, and we're definitely just doing this. This is the first time we're recording this intro this episode. It's me, Sam, as always, joined by Nick. And today we have some very special guests. We got the Allanson brothers, the creative minds behind YIIK, a postmodern RPG. Give them the intro treatment, Nick. Let the people know what they're about.
So, Andrew Allanson, he is a wonderful composer, writer, and storyteller in general. Brian, spectacular artist, 3D and 2D, created a wonderful design, in particular the Handsome Crow, which I am especially infatuated with, and we are very elated to have them on the show and kind of pick their brains about the upcoming I.V release for Y2K.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen, for coming on.
Thanks for having us. Feels like the first time.
Very good.
It's cyclical.
Yeah, exactly. On today's episode, we'll be discussing their past work and their latest 1.5 update with Nameless Psychosis, as well as, taking a look into the past with their histories with gaming. Before we get into that, I like to do a little media check-in at the top of the episode. Nick, any exciting media you've been wanting to share?
Yeah. I just saw this really thoughtful film called Paris, Texas by Wim Wenders, I believe.
Wim Wenders, oh yes.
Yeah, really great. There's a guy named Travis Touchdown, which made me think of. I've been playing a lot of Third Strike. I've just been playing Third Strike.
Mm-hmm. Hugo Maine, famously.
Yeah, I like when he slaps people and they scream.
Mm-hmm. And I know I've mentioned it before, but I do love that soundtrack in Third Strike, just the mix of hip-hop and Street Fighter.
It's amazing.
A match made in heaven.
It's the best.
Yes. And on my end, I've been, I watched Perfect Days, another film by Wim Wenders. Beautiful, meditative, and authentic look at everyday life, in the life of a Japanese toilet cleaner. And I highly recommend that one. It watches like a Murakami novel reads, I would say. One might say.
I'll definitely have to check it out. It sounds cool.
And fellas, what about you? Anything interesting coming through your pipelines that you thought that you'd like to share?
Yeah, actually, I watched this great show on Netflix called Ripley, which was a remake of the movie The Talented Mr. Ripley. Whole thing shot in black and white. Probably the best piece of television I've seen in a long time. Every episode had such amazing suspense. The whole thing's shot in Italy, and it feels almost like an Italian version of Hitchcock.
Are you familiar with the original with Jude Law and Matt Damon? Oh, okay. Just wanted to, And they made a series out of it, which is interesting.
It's really amazing. Definitely check that out.
Okay, yeah. I certainly curious. Kind of Talented Mr. Ripley adjacent. Did either of you see Saltburn earlier this year or last year when it came out?
No, didn't really appeal to me.
Fair enough. Nick's fiance described it as like a less good Talented Mr. Ripley.
Yeah, that's exactly
everything's
what
a remake.
And I didn't think about it while watching it, but I was like, oh my god, you're very, very apt observation there. But definitely want to check Ripley out. Very cool. And I think that's about it on the media check-in. Yeah, Nick? Nothing else to report, before we jump
anything
in.
From Brian?
We did talk about how cool Brian was for liking fighting games.
Yes.
We did, certainly.
We missed that part.
Brian,
what fighting games do you like?
Yeah, your history with fighting games.
Dragon Ball FighterZ is the one that I've gotten the most into. Guilty Gear, of course, and then Capcom vs. SNK 2.
I do have to ask, who did you use in Capcom vs. SNK and Guilty Gear? And was it Slayer and Yamazaki by any chance?
I actually didn't really have like a main in Capcom vs. SNK. I would just keep switching characters.
There's so many characters in that shit. Yeah, no, totally.
But I couldn't pick a favorite. They're so good.
Mm-hmm. But
who's the girl with the bird? Nakaruru?
Actually,
I would use her a lot.
One second.
Oh, we got something coming.
That crazy dive bomb with the bird.
You have a figure. I'm jealous.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, cool.
Yes, and viewers, you can see through our red filter so clearly that figure that Nick brought up. for
He just
listeners.
produced an anime fertility statue.
Very cool.
It was real. It was real. It's the whole reason why I'm getting married is because of that statue.
That's good. It's very good.
It brings you luck.
Nice.
Very cool.
Right on. And you also mentioned Soul Calibur and playing that at parties, which is something I truly enjoy. I don't think something gets a party going quite like a fighting game tournament.
Yeah.
Just like impromptu.
Yeah,
Soul
that's the way to
Calibur is
do
an
it.
underrated party game.
I know,
Totally.
The custom characters are so great. I remember seeing a skeleton fight against a gigantic, horrifically misshapen guy. It always brings a lot of laughs.
A fun party thing, a party game my house and I like to do is we set like a 2 or 3 minute timer, and then we let people create characters within that time frame, and then we all have a tournament with that.
Oh, that's cool.
The pressure from the time limit really brings the creativity out in some. So, you know, viewers, listeners, try that out the next time you have company.
Yeah.
It might be a good time.
Art through limitations.
Exactly. But yeah, moving right along. Gentlemen, I love to ask all our guests, since we are a video games podcast, their personal histories and journeys with gaming as, you know, a player, and eventually with you guys as developers. So, where would you say that all started?
It was really our cousin's house. Like our cousin Christopher he had all the game consoles. So I remember going over and watching him play Mario 64 and being really just amazed that video games existed. I had no idea that video games were a thing at this point in my life. And I remember going home and asking my dad if he knew how they were made. And my dad was really good with computers. And, you know, so he had a basic understanding of like how you would make a game, even though he wasn't a programmer. And, you know, once I realized that it was something that could be done, I got really obsessed with the idea of trying it. And before we even had a game console, we were learning Quick Basic and making, you know, some pretty simple games in there.
Very cool. Did you guys ever get into developing for Flash or anything like that in the early noughties or?
Anything on Newgrounds?
Yeah.
We did some animation stuff in Flash, but nothing we ever released.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, fair enough. Right on. You mentioned your cousins, and you know, I think I also had cousins that game, and I think that's such a great formative early memory as young people. Just sharing that, I think, is such a wonderful thing to bond over. And I think it's very cool that you two decided to approach this together. Because, you know, I don't know if you have other siblings that, you know, you try to create with, but I know it's not always the easiest thing to do with family. But,
well, you know,
kudos to
we
you guys for
shared a
sticking with it.
room together. So we had a room together, so it made collaborating easy. You know, we had a computer in our room. Not at first, probably after like 2 years of making stuff, our grandfather gave us his old computer. We used to have to use my dad's computer in the basement because in the mid to late 90s, computers were pretty rare. Not every household had one, and most of them definitely were not equipped to actually make things on.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
So having like another person who could, you know, help you figure out how something complicated like a game is put together definitely made it easier. Because, you know, at that point, there was not like a lot of resources besides books. Like there were game development books. There may have been forums, but like, you know, we were children, so we didn't have access to the internet all the time.
Right.
Certainly.
For the best, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Right on. As far as formative gaming memories go, with Y2K being an RPG, what were like the earliest RPG memories you guys have, if any?
Well, for me, Zelda 2 was an RPG, but I didn't know it at the time
Yeah.
when I played it at my cousin's house. Like, different cousins older than me, they had like the NES and all these games, and whenever we'd go over there, they'd sit me in front of like an NES or something. So Zelda 2 is probably the
Those
first
are
RPG.
Good cousins right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
But I
Classics.
think Probably Pokemon was the first game that made me realize like that RPGs were like a thing.
Nice.
Yeah, I think shortly after Pokemon Red, we played uh, Lufia 2 through emulation, and that
Oh,
definitely had a big impact on us. And I have a very fond memory of playing Tales of Destiny 2 on two player. Like we played through that entire game
yeah.
using the two-player option. And then I think once we found the RPG as a genre, we'd pretty much always seek out RPGs as the next game to play.
Yeah.
So like I remember when the GameCube was out and there was like no RPGs on it, and that was like torture.
You
Because
played
we had gone from that being
Biting
like our
Kaitos or
favorite
whatever
thing.
that one was. Yeah.
Was
Right
that
on.
later in the cycle?
I don't
Or
remember. We had gotten Tales of Symphonia over Battenkitis. I don't think they were at the same time, but basically the
yeah,
first
when
one
we were
I had for the GameCube was Lost Kingdoms, I guess.
Mm.
yeah, Lost Kingdoms is an interesting game. It's a From Software game that no one talks about. And it's not hard like modern From Software games or even other From Software games.
Yeah.
But there's a unique atmosphere to it that I think people who like From Software would definitely find something really cool there.
Best known for its
Yeah.
unique system of combat.
I definitely recommend playing it. The second one, a lot of people like more, but there's something about the first one that should. A lot of people just ignore the first one, but there's something to.
It's like a
Something to
unique quality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to check
Certain
that out.
magical atmosphere, especially the music. Music in that game is so cool.
I know that really does everything for RPGs, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, the music in an RPG is the game's culture. Like the in-world culture comes from the music.
Hmm.
Alright.
Speaking from experience.
I mean, it's just what I first noticed that about playing Ocarina of Time, like the feeling of the different towns was really driven by the sort of like um the different soundtracks, like
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Kakariko Village
Hmm.
or even like Lon Lon Ranch. Like it puts you in those locations in a way that a lot of game soundtracks um should, but maybe necessarily don't do as well. Like
Yeah.
there's a sort of really unique diversity to the sounds of Ocarina of Time.
Oh,
Yes,
totally.
it is a really amazing, really great ability. I think both Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask of really setting the mood and the atmosphere that I think is kind of lost in favor of like a kind of just ambient soundtrack, which is fine, but it feels like they're trying to make sure the music doesn't get in the way instead
Yeah.
of
I think
uplifting the game and the gameplay.
developers or companies aren't using music as a utilizing it to its fullest potential as a storytelling device. I think yeah, instrumentation in a track can tell so much about like where you are and that sort of thing. Yeah, I hear what you're saying
Yeah,
there.
the current like fad, and I don't mean that as a pejorative, just like the zeitgeist of game composers is interactive music. And the more
Mm,
interactive, the better, even if that means less melodic content and less dense orchestration. Um, and that's cool, but we're probably going to find that it does mark this specific period of gaming, and those games will be dated by it in the same way that older games are dated by graphics.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's like
agreed.
the open world version of music.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I 100% agree. I personally, especially the Western studios, not to be too much of a Japanophile, but I am not a fan of the current ambient soundtrack, the current unnecessary, I
yeah.
guess. But I feel like Japanese developers are still very capable of creating interesting sounds.
As far as RPG composers go, do you guys have a favorite or favorites? Either a soundtrack or just a composer
Yeah. I
in
don't want to
general.
butcher anyone's names, so I'll do it by game
Hmm.
instead. Um, Final Fantasy IX
Oh,
is probably like my top game soundtrack. Um, and then I would say Final Fantasy 12, I think, is really good as well. And so for something that's not Final Fantasy, I'll have to go with Lost Odyssey on Xbox 360, which is the same composer as Final Fantasy
I
9.
think those are all Nobuo Uematsu. Yeah.
Final Fantasy 12 is not. That's
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Hashimoto, but yeah,
Mhm.
he did. Yes.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah,
Was
we're
he-
big Uematsu fans, and then
Not to
Sakimoto
get-
was the lead on 12.
Okay. Was that the composer for
Tactics
Big-
as well.
Yes,
the
it
Evil
is.
East games?
I think so. I think he did all of
Vagrant
them, and
Story.
also
If he did Tactics as well, yeah, it
The
should.
Tactics had a really good soundtrack.
It did. I was a
of course
big
the
fan.
Nier games are as a more modern example are excellent soundtracks. Those are
Yes.
really good.
I remember that's what pushed me through the original Nier on the PlayStation because the gameplay was so horrible, but the music was amazing.
That's funny. I didn't have an issue with the gameplay, and I played it after I played Automata.
Well, that was my fault because I played on hard, which doesn't really add anything. It just makes everything take forever to kill. But I thought I would
Yeah.
get something out of it. But
Tankier
it's,
enemies.
You got
It's
more
pointless.
gameplay out of it.
Yeah, it lasted longer
Oh boy.
to its detriment, to my detriment.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, and Hotline Miami. That's another
That's a
great
good
game
one.
soundtrack.
Spectacular.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Right on. Yeah, I was gonna ask. Moving kind of past, the early days of gaming, was there anything within recent years that you've been enjoying, or are looking forward to even?
Soundtrack wise, or just games in general?
Just games in general.
general.
Yeah. Yeah.
Armored Core 6 was
Nice.
that really resonated with both me and Brian. We were really obsessed with that game when it came out.
Did you
I
play
really-
the previous entries at all?
I played
or
some
was
of
this
them.
kind of jumping in?
I played some of them, but
Okay.
and I never beat any of them. This was the first one I beat.
Yeah. Right.
Stellar Blade, I loved. I really enjoyed Stellar Blade.
Okay.
And then I just started Rise of the Ronin last night, and
Nice.
I'm about 5 hours into that, and I think that's quite good as well.
Okay. Have you played Neo 1 or 2?
Yeah, I played Neo 1. I think this
Okay.
is better.
Yeah. It looked up my alley. I am looking forward to getting to that one eventually. I think you guys could relate that there's just so
so
many
many.
games. Yeah.
Have you played Ghost of Tsushima?
I have.
Okay.
Have.
If you liked Ghost of Tsushima, it's Rise of the Ronin borrows a lot from it.
Yeah,
So-
it looked like it certainly.
Yeah, a lot.
But yeah, I'm more of like a Way of the Samurai kind of enjoyer of samurai media than the sort of Ubisoftian formula that Ghost of Tsushima took. But I mean, beautiful game, like and fun to play.
I really enjoyed that game.
Yeah, right on. What about you, Brian? Any?
I've been playing Unicorn Overlord and only Unicorn Overlord. So
Yeah, that's the
Vanilla
Soft,
Fire strategy
right?
RPG. It's basically
Oh, not
Like
the
they-
aesthetic I expected.
it's the game plays like they took Ogre Battle
Okay.
and Fire Emblem, I guess, and just kind of smash them together.
Yeah, it sounds
But
great.
mostly it plays like Ogre Battle,
Okay. Yes.
which not a lot of people I know have ever played Ogre Battle. So
I played Ogre Battle 64 for about
it's
2
very
hours.
similar to Ogre Battle 64.
Okay. I was gonna say, and then I couldn't
Like,
understand
right
what was
at-
happening and gave up. I wasn't very good at it.
Ogre Battle? Is that like Tactics Ogre or?
It's
is.
the same series, but it plays different.
Oh, okay.
So it's got more real-time strategy elements.
Okay.
So
Nice.
it's a weird, unique game.
Looks.
And Unicorn Overlord is like the only clone I know of besides some random GameCube Yu-Gi-Oh game that tried to mimic the formula.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the trailers for it. It seemed like they were more pushing the Fire Emblem look or feel, trying to get the Fire Emblem audience. But you're saying that that's more of
Yeah,
It's
it
really
really
had
what
that
it borrows
feeling.
from Fire Emblem is like the support system from Fire Emblem, and then actually it's honestly mostly that.
just supports.
Is
Yeah.
this anything like
fun.
the is this anything like that mode in Soul Calibur 3 where you could create a character and then you had like
The like sword,
kind of a
way of the
weird
sword,
map?
whatever.
Yeah. It looks
Not
like
really.
that. Okay.
Not really.
Fair enough.
They both have a map, I assume.
Yeah.
That might be about it.
I see the aesthetic similarity, but kind of a
but
different thing.
plays different. Right on.
I
Okay.
have to look at Soul Calibur 3, but yeah, I think
Yes, I guess if it does take the support system, would you say it's more like the modern Fire Emblem, where it's like you can be everyone's best friend and everyone loves you and everyone wants to
it,
be with you and you're God, or is it more like Fire Emblem for the Game Boy Advance, where you could really only max out your time with certain people and you have to kind of pick and choose who you want to be around, and the benefits you get from that are actually somewhat substantial.
no, it's more like I guess you can. It doesn't seem like there's a limit. Like you seem to be able to just support everyone, but there's a lot of characters to support, and almost everyone seems to be able to interact with like everyone else. Like it's kind of crazy. I don't know how they did it.
Yeah. Would you say the interactions are worth seeking out at least?
Yeah, they're not like they're usually pretty interesting. Some
Okay.
couple characters have like goofy ones like in Fire Emblem, but it's not like there's a lot, it's not like it's all goofy ones.
Right. Not like kind of like pandering, I suppose.
Yeah. And I just found out I could change my character's hair color, which was my only complaint. Now,
Now they solved it. Wonderful. Okay.
so I'm all in on that game.
Very cool. And that's very new. Came out this year, huh?
Yep.
Right on. Nice. Okay. Well, I think we can, unless anyone else has any other thoughts on, gaming right now or gaming from the past that kind of informs what you've been doing. Otherwise, I think we could move on to sort of the development of what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah,
Y2K.
I think I'm good for that if you are.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yes.
Nick, would you like
Excellent.
to open up the questions here, since you're
Yes.
certainly more familiar with it than
The
than I
main
am.
topic, the
Yeah.
main attraction. I'm literally. It's very difficult. I feel when I'm face to face with people whose work I'm infatuated. It's really hard not to. I feel embarrass myself, so I'll try to restrain myself. So right off the bat, with the development cycle of Y2K, you've been working on the game there's a 6-year development cycle. Is that correct?
For the original.
For the original.
Yeah, I think it was 6 years. Basically, like there was yeah, I think it took about 6 years, but it was, let's see, so like we started full time in 2015 and it came out in 2019, and we had about 1 year in there where we were only doing it part time because we ran out of money, so we had to work on other stuff. So it's closer to 4 years, but the amount of time from when it was like conceived to release was 2014 to 2019. 2015 though was when development really started. That was full-time development start.
Speaking of 2015, I noticed something actually in your PAX 2015 demo that I think has kind of come back in the iPoint-V update, if you don't mind kind of getting out off track here.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, in the 2015 demo, I noticed in the factory hotel segment that Alex was able to like pick up items like the bomb and take them into battle and utilize them, which wasn't present obviously in the final game. But in the new game, you do have the Carta system. So I was wondering if that kind of was the vestiges of the item system in the original game coming through in this new way, or that was completely spawned independently of those original ideas.
Man, that's such an interesting question, because I completely forgot that that's how the game used to work. So I think unconsciously that may have been a factor in it, but originally the battle system was going to be about bringing things from the game's map into the battle system to use, and that was like the whole vision for the battle system. But then early on, we received a lot of feedback from people that we should not do that and we should make a mini game based combat. And that kind of was just like, so many people were saying this to us, it kind of just seemed like the way to go. And I think that if we had stuck with the original idea, it probably would have been a more interesting battle system.
Yeah, I would still like to see where that would go someday.
Yeah, I feel like there's still potential in the idea of having to find items in the game's dungeons to use in battle as like the primary mechanic.
I actually have something about that, but we'll get to that later when we're talking about the future. Otherwise, I'll get completely off track.
Yeah, could we get like, I guess from the beginning, like what was the seed that eventually would become Y2K? Was there like a moment where you're like, oh, this is a story that I've really wanted to tell? or
This
is it something?
yeah. Brian and I were talking about how there was this big rise in hipsters, and everyone looked like time travelers because all of a sudden people were wearing their dad's clothing,
Yeah.
and we're like, oh, hey, a time traveler eventually became this idea of a guy who was sort of stuck in the past, and a guy who was, sort of like instead of traveling through time, was sort of like stuck in a point of time,
Okay.
and the idea really just developed from there, looking at sort of in 2014 there was like the hipster boom was massive. Everything had
Oh yeah.
mustaches on it, everything was plaid.
Yeah,
And
horrible.
I think like the type of guy we were exploring was a more common trope than he was in 2019 when the game came out. So I feel like it kind of missed the critical window of what we were talking about. And then I feel like only in the past like 2 years have people started to pick up on that
Mm-hmm.
On Alex's
hipsterism.
yes,
Hipsterism.
what he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Right on.
So, so that was the main impetus for Y2K, or at least that was the impetus for the character of Alex at the beginning.
Yeah,
That's what kind of made
yeah,
him
and
who he
then
is today.
yeah, so then we were looking at like what things are hipsters sort of like holding on to,
Mm-hmm.
and it became like this idea of a sort of like exploring the idea of like a nostalgia trap where you're not entirely aware of the fact that you're stuck in a nostalgia trap, and just sort of like thinking about that type of person. And we all have this in us, like this is definitely not us casting judgment on like a type of guy. This is something like I think all millennials
Yeah.
fall prey
Yes.
to.
I think playing through your game, I was like, this plays so much into like a certain brand of millennial nostalgia.
It's
And
true.
I think you guys have captured it really well.
Sam
Well-
told me that, and I was like, yes.
He's getting
He's getting it. He's understanding. He's learning.
He's starting to believe. Yeah,
Yes.
it's
I love the Matrix.
it's weird when it's weird to talk about Alex because he's such a universally hated character, even by people who love Alex's character. They hate him, and it's hard to talk about him without either seeming like we are too judgmental of Alex or we are too forgiving of Alex. And I think that when you're writing a character, you're a bit more dispassionate about it because you're thinking about how they would be and what their motivations are, and it's hard to get angry and judge a fictional character, like whereas like with real people, it's super easy to judge and hate them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been kind of wild to see the judgment people have for real individuals being put on a fictional character like Alex.
It is a
Because
little
people
strange.
people
Yeah.
really really hate him.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure that's a lot of projection from individuals.
I
parts,
think
you know?
unquestionably it is a lot of projection.
Yeah.
I think it is the people seeing the mirror and responding poorly.
I mean, maybe that could be the case, or it could be that in a video game, there are certain types of accepted tropes for what it means for a character to be unlikable, and we sort of stepped outside of the norm, and we made people engage with something that is unusual for the medium, and that might also explain the reaction to him. I mean, it could be column A, column B, but I think that people are complicated, just like Alex is complicated.
sure,
So it's hard to
certainly,
find one reason why people detest him so much.
Yeah.
Even if you compare him to like a character who's like a literal murderer, people don't get as angry about that.
Right, because they're sexy or something.
I mean, that's a big part of it, right? Like if Alex had been, it's weird though because Alex kind of has become a sex icon for some people.
Yeah.
I don't
Really?
quite understand.
There's a lot of buff Alex artwork, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
Well,
I won't wade too deep into that one.
we certainly don't have to. Oh well, hey, power to those people, you know. But I mean, I think it's great creating a character that sort of challenges people's empathy, you know, or just challenges people in general, you know. I think sparking a sort of discussion or dialogue for people to engage with something that they might find detestable is important.
when most people make a story is trying to spark people's empathy or challenge their empathy, they manipulate the audience into giving them
Mm.
a reason to empathize with the character, right? Like they show why they are the way
Yeah,
they
they use those
are,
tricks certainly. Yeah.
and yeah, and they make you feel like they make you feel bad for them. But like, somebody who is it's hard to feel bad for a guy who has like a really big house and is like not getting a job
Hmm.
and is like blowing off all his responsibility to just like play internet detective.
Yeah, to chase a cat around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's Alex's origin. Did any other character have like? Was there any other character that you knew before even starting the game? This person needs to be present in the final product. Like was Vela, Claudio, Rory, anyone like that?
I
Kind
think,
of.
Brian, do you remember the order that because basically Brian 3D modeled the characters and then we gave them stories after he made them. Do you
Oh,
Yeah,
remember the
cool.
order that
Yeah.
you made them in, Brian?
I feel like the order, and I could be wrong, but I think the order is Bella, then possibly Michael, then Alex, then the Ascension 2000.
Yeah,
Really?
I think that's right. Like we had some images for what we thought Alex would look like, a sort of like image board of like hipster aesthetics.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So like we knew what he was going to be. But like when you're looking for an art style, you pretty much always want to know what the girls are going to look like. If you know what the girls are going to look like, it's kind of easier to imagine the whole thing.
Yeah, if you get your girls and you get your main character, unless your main character is a girl, then you got to find your main guy. But
Hmm.
you get like the main guy and the main girl, then you kind of know what your art style is and kind of branch out from there.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and I think
Those.
for that reason, Vela has slightly higher poly face than the rest of the
She
characters, just
does, yeah,
because
because
we're
I made her
still.
first and I wasn't sure what I was doing with it. She actually started off as like a realistically shaded sculpt, if I remember. So she's
Oh yeah,
actually,
and ZBrush.
yeah, she's like a really weird model that like I wish didn't get carried through the finish line the way that it did. I would have simplified it, but it's fine.
Well, I noticed also, getting to that, the Vela also has a pretty radically different design from the preliminary screenshots from the final product, whereas Alex is, I think, is mostly the same outside of his flannel changing color.
Alex had shorter hair. He had more of like a crew cut with like a widow's peak in the beginning,
Right, I
and
believe
then
she
we
has
went for
energy.
more of the hipster comb over
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah. Nice.
And I think the character of the Essentia, I think was the second character we really knew her story. We knew that this idea that she was this woman made of plastic who was like a sort of like a idealized like anime figure that
Right.
Alex is in love with. So
Hmm.
she's like the sort of like the waifu that he's like, because throughout the game like Alex's obsession changes, like he has like hyperfixation, but the target of the hyperfixation changes in specifics, but
Yes.
the sort of like core symbol stays the same. So like it starts off with him chasing the cat becomes him chasing Sammy becomes him chasing Vela, which becomes chasing Essentia, and then by the end he has to convince himself that all of these things are connected.
Yes.
And then it sort of comes under this umbrella of like, of course they're connected, they're all the same person metaphysically.
Hmm.
And it's like a sort of like this idea that he's looking for this plastic woman, because the women he's looking for are not filling this this bucket that he's trying to, I don't know what metaphor I'm going for there, but they're not filling the
Yeah.
void,
Yeah.
so
Right.
he's looking for the plastic one that's not real, and then when he
Okay.
finds the plastic one that's not real, it kind of destroys everything.
Right. They're flawed. I'm perfect.
So having that idea basically allowed the whole game to just come together. I think that was like the core premise, and then
Okay.
you know it just sort of, once we had that idea, it was pretty easy to just
Go
see
from
how the
there.
whole thing fit together. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How early on in the process did you guys decide like on the visual style of it, because it's a very unique looking game. Even today, like back then it was, and then today it still stands out, I feel. Was there any
Uh,
specific like rationale behind it?
Brian, do you want to tell the story of the 50
You cut
day?
out for me for a second. Could you
Uh,
repeat the question?
Oh
do you want
yeah,
to?
my question or Andrew's question.
Your
Sorry.
question.
Oh, I was just asking about if there was any specific how early on in the process did you decide on the visual style of everything? You know, the color palette, the shading style,
I feel
all
like it
that.
happened pretty early on, and it must have been happening simultaneously. Because I know it took us basically about a month to create our sort of prototype demo that we made.
Hmm.
Yeah, so basically what we did was we always do like a game jam on New Year's where we try and make screenshot mockups for whatever our next project will be.
Oh,
Hmm.
that's
So
right. That's how we started this.
yeah, so on New Year's we made the initial screenshot mockups, which showed like a town and a battle mode and like a cutscene. And I think we put that together, I think in about 12 hours.
Okay.
That was
Yeah,
the Vela model was done already, and then the visual style of the shading and stuff all came together in like that
yeah.
12
And
hours.
I don't even think Vela made it into the screenshots, did she? Or maybe she
No,
did.
she did. She's in
She's in the alpaca
the
screenshot, right?
alpaca
Yes,
screenshot, yeah.
I really like that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then from there, like we basically challenged ourselves to like we bought a booth at PAX East and we said we have got like 50 days to make a prototype. Let's make a prototype for Y2K and bring it there. And we did, and that's where we found our publisher. And then it
Nice.
sort of all came together from there.
Yeah,
Very nice.
that's very
So,
cool. Yeah, the sort of like pressure cooker
Yeah.
producing
Yeah.
something. I like that. I like that.
But the nice thing about making a prototype is you can take a lot of shortcuts and do a lot of things you shouldn't do on a full game.
Hmm. Is it sort of like prepping that vertical slice and then like
Yeah,
don't
it
worry
just has
about
to
the
look
other
like it's a
things?
real game, but you
Yeah.
can cheat in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
so at the point of the prototype, how much of the story would you say was definitively finished in your mind, at least, if not written out?
The core idea that Alex was chasing this woman made of plastic was it that's in the prototype, right? Like so they go into the alternate dimension and they find the Essentia there. She's in like this sort of like a celestial overview of the world. And
Hmm.
then there's the elevator where the sort of scary thing comes out of the elevator when you fight the uh the entity. So like those story beats, who Alex was as a person, were already set in stone. And then the specifics, like the specific plot beats, probably developed within like maybe like 2 months after the prototype was done. Because we wrote
Nice.
the game in between August and November. The whole script was written between like August and November, and then we recorded in November. So
Wow.
we had, and that was a mistake. It was a mistake to
Oh
write
yeah.
it. Yeah, because it locked. So like if we didn't have a sort of, it's one thing to write something that reads like a screenplay and is interesting as a screenplay, but then when you insert gameplay between it, there's things that could be done better using the gameplay and using the
Hmm.
environments. But once the voice acting is all recorded, you end up serving the voice acting with all your creative
Mm,
decisions.
I see.
So for IV, we did it differently. We only wrote an outline for the story, like what all the main plot beats are, and then while we were making the content, we wrote the dialogue at the same time, and then we recorded everything at the end. So once all the cutscenes were fully produced, we recorded the voice acting, which
Yeah.
had
Okay.
other challenges. Like it's that was difficult in a different way, but this definitely made a better game.
Yeah, it was almost like being able to film like on location as much
Mm-hmm.
as you can in a video game anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right. So you'd say the method before is kind of like just
crap, don't do
ADRing
it.
everything in, or
Don't do it.
don't do
I
it.
promise
Just
you, you're
don't
gonna
even
regret it.
Figured
bother.
out a really
Don't do
cool
it.
way not to do this. Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
that's how you learn, and
Yeah.
I think that's awesome, and it's great to hear these stories. Very cool. That kind of feeds into yeah, other parts of the questions regarding the past development. Is some of the biggest lessons you learned
Sure.
doing it?
Okay, so like the biggest lesson we learned is have you guys ever seen the back of a Dr. Bronner's soap bottle?
Yeah, the giant text dump.
Yeah, it's like this like weird schizo post.
Yeah,
There's this
all
thing
one.
on there that says something like reduce, reduce, reduce over and over again, talking about how you're supposed to use the soap. But then like it goes on to talk about like how you should like always try and simplify things. And you know what? That's right. Because what we found is the first idea is always the most complicated version. And if you can reduce it, over and over again continually. Like you start it, like you make a plan with the complex vision, then you reduce it once, you make the second part, and then once you've done, the two parts of the vision, if you can reduce it a third time, you can see how ideas that seem like two things depend on each other could be conjoined and mashed together. All of a sudden you realize you can tell bigger stories in more simple ways. And you can also make more complicated gameplay with less parts. So I think like the biggest thing we learned is to just continually take the idea and simplify, and then simplify it and simplify it. So like, a good example would be we made the outline for IV. It was something like maybe like 50 scenes or something. And then the second outline was 25 scenes. And by the time we were done, it was 7. And we're like, we could technically tell this entire story in 7 scenes. And then from there, we chose what things we wanted to expand on. So it ends up being more than 7 scenes. But like, if you can do it in just a smaller amount of time, you can pick and choose where to put your effort. Right. And, that's not something we knew to do in the first version.
Mm-hmm. That's very kind of funny to hear, because just looking at IV, even from the intro alone, it seems like so much has been added to the game. It can't even really be considered the same game.
No, it's not. It's Y2K with a blood transfusion, but the blood it received was a superior life force than what I was running on before.
Yeah, like what, Lance Armstrong?
Yeah, it's doping. We doped it up.
Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting and a good way to be economical with your storytelling. And I was wondering, like, as a creative, how do you balance like having mystique, but then also like not doing too much or explaining too much? I feel like as a creative, we're not so tempting to.
If you're not David Lynch, don't try and be mysterious. Just shut up. Just be honest. Be open about what you did. Okay. Be open about how you think about it. Don't try and play a fucking character. No one cares. You're not Yoko Taro. Take the fucking mask off and just be yourself.
There you go. Yeah. Right on.
So since you're laying it all out there, how do we get the third ending?
Well, we never really numbered the ending, so it's really hard to answer a question like that.
Yeah, I don't know if you're referring to the fourth one.
Okay, how would one go about? Actually, I'll get to it later.
We'll get to the spoiler zone eventually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Right on.
That's a great insight into the initial and the current launch development cycle. So going from there, I suppose. So you had the 6-year cycle. There was no real changes to the story, correct? Throughout that, the 6 years.
Yeah, there were no changes because we recorded everything.
Right.
I think we did like some pickups for like for some of the voice acting, like, oh, this thing needed to be voice acted, and it was written like, but they were like connecting scenes and stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, for the most part, it is the script that I wrote between August and November in 2015.
Nice.
For better or worse.
That is a shame to me that there's so much in 2 months.
Yeah, frankly, yeah.
It was like, it's I mean, look, if you write 8 hours a day, you'd be amazed at how much you can do if you're productive. Like, because we had an office back then, so I'd get into work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I would sit and I'd write until 5 o'clock, and I would only get up for lunch or to talk to Brian about an idea, and I needed to get it done. I had a hard deadline because all the actors were going to be on Thanksgiving break, so we basically had like a week before Thanksgiving that we could record it. And it had to get done. So,
if you don't mind me asking, how exactly did you get in contact with the voice actors? Because you have a pretty decent cast. If I say so myself, like you've got Chris Niosi. He's a pretty big name now with anime dubbing. Correct? He's Reagan.
Mob
Psycho. So was this before when he was more of like a Flash and
no, he was already an established actor at this point. So when we showed off the PAX East demo, the same one that we found our publisher at, we were approached by Brittany Lotta, who is a voice acting cast. She's a casting director for anime, and she was saying that she was getting into games, and she gave us her card, and we checked her website out, and she was really legit, and she had worked on a bunch of cool stuff. And when we got a publisher, one of the things we asked them was to fund the voice acting. And they agreed that the game needed voice acting to sort of tell the story we wanted to tell. And we got in contact with her, and she made it all happen. She has all the connections to get the right people to audition. She had a vision for who should play each character, so she knew which types of actors to bring in. And the whole casting process, I think, took about a month.
Okay.
And you get like 20 auditions for each character. None of them have names on them, and you just go by ear, and you pick the top 3 you like. And I picked 3, Brian picked 3, and then Brittany picked 3. And if there were any overlaps, they got called in for like potentially another read, or they got offered the role.
Nice. Very cool.
Very insightful, yeah.
It is super.
I do have to ask, for Roy in particular, that's Yuri of Wind, right?
Yes.
The YouTuber. So was he like a special pick, like we gotta have this guy to play this character, or did he audition himself?
Like everyone else. Yeah.
He didn't audition, but we did hear, if I remember correctly, we did listen to people do the character, and it just wasn't what I wanted. And I had the sort of bullshit creepypasta story time thing that he does in my head when I was writing the character, and I had kind of imagined it with his voice. So then we asked him if he would do it, and he was enthusiastic enough to say yes, and so that came together. He was the only person who I kind of had like a voice in mind when I wrote it. Actually, I will say, when I wrote Alex, I had pictured Rupert Degas, who does the audiobooks for a lot of the Murakami books.
Right on.
And I had sort of had his cadence in my head.
Yeah.
But we never even auditioned him or anything. I think he was maybe union or something. There was some reason we couldn't even get in contact.
Sure. Right. But he was the initial.
But Chris is better. Chris is perfect. He's perfect as Alex.
He is.
Yeah.
He is. So anyone listening, if you want to be a voice actor, do some creepypasta readings. And speaking of, I gotta write some notes real quick about. Right, so I think that's everything regarding the development cycle. Yeah, the initial one. There's the Cape Juno demo, I believe. Was that in 2016?
I don't remember.
It's honestly all a blur to me.
Well, I can imagine you guys have spent a long time on this project.
I want to say it's like the 3rd or 4th demo we made at that point.
I think it was like the 4th one. Because we had because the whole time we were making the game, our mom was fighting cancer. So it was like we had like this really exciting thing that we were given this opportunity to make a game, and we were able to afford to get an office and to sort of pay employees and work on it. And then at the same time, we had this like complete absolute hell at home. So it was like this weird thing of going like the best time of our life and also the worst time of our life.
Right.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
People have gotten weird about that too. Like people have really tried to bring that into the sort of narrative of the game, and that's been very disturbing to see. It's really wild what people will do with a little bit of information.
A little bit of information, just start spinning it.
They make headcanon about real people.
Yeah.
It's really disturbing. People are sick. It's almost like they're exactly like the Honest users. How weird.
Yeah. I don't know. Very, very reaction nod of them. Yeah, I read Honism. Anyway,
I'm a bit curious about the musical soundscape of everything.
Yeah, who's responsible for that?
I did quite a bit of the music, and we had a lot of really wonderful guest composers. It was I worked with, in the original game, I worked with this guy Jose Alfaro, who was definitely a big part of the sound. He was he did a lot of the production on them. For IV, it's different. IV, the most of it is just me with a few guests here and there. But
right on. What's
the IV soundtrack is almost as long as the original. It's massive. It's a massive amount of new music.
Okay. Yeah, from what I've already experienced, just the tutorial fight, I'm very much looking forward to the new tracks.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. What's your creative process like? Do you just like go into like your DAW or whatever and then just start like writing a melody, or is there something?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's different now than it was on 1.0.
I
You
can
know, on
imagine. Yeah.
1.0, I wasn't very good with the piano roll. I was very classical. I would notate everything, and it took a lot more time. But you know, I forced myself to just learn to, you know, use the piano roll or just like record some. Like I've recorded a lot of stuff live on for
Okay.
IV. Like
Yeah.
just plug the guitar directly in. You know, record drums, record organ.
Nice.
So like it's a lot more impromptu because it's not being notated first. So like I usually find some sort of foundation, whether that's like a drum groove or a bass line or a chord progression I like, and then I just work on chipping away at the various elements
Yeah.
of it.
Very organic. It sounds like. I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Cool.
Yes, yeah. Sam is also a composer.
Oh, very cool.
Occasionally, yes, I dabble.
Yes.
But yeah, right on. Do you have like a background in music growing
Yeah, I
up, or?
studied music in college. I was a composition major.
Right on.
So
Where at?
I'm not saying.
Okay, no.
And it was a
no worries.
but it was all orchestral music. So
Yeah.
like I also studied the violin. So like I have
Nice.
a very classical foundation.
Okay.
But
My brother
it's,
studied composition at UOP back in the day.
Okay.
So right on. Yeah.
cool.
Very cool. Nice. Well, that was my question about the music. Kind of peek behind the curtain there.
Yes, and the same thing for Brian. I was wondering, for the character creation, was it the same as it was with Alex for each one? Just kind of that, rather than concept art, kind of just like a mood board sort of look for each character? Or was there any like just kind of image in your head that you kind of had to get out and create with a 3D modeler? Or was there
So
any concept
each of them is
art?
a little different. I don't tend to do like the thing where a lot of people will draw artwork of the character in 2D and then bring it into 3D and start working on it. I just kind of work directly in 3D.
Straight to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then for some characters, I had like actual people in mind. So I would look at photos of the people, and then I just kind of get a sense for them, and then kind of put them in. Maybe I would mix one or two people so that it didn't look like the actual person, but it was like a mix of two different people.
Anyone in particular, like an actor, or was it mostly like people you actually know?
It was mostly people I know.
Cool.
And what are their names?
Michael.
Oh yeah, I think I saw that Michael is based on your relative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on.
And the character Wilfred is based on one of our best friends.
Really
Yes.
Yeah.
interesting. Based on what I know about Wilfred.
Well, his character is not, nothing really like Wilfred as a person.
Oh, just his likeness.
In a funny way,
I was-
though, there's kind of a joke among us with how kind of crazy we made that character.
Yeah.
It's like, I
It's, a
think
lot
I
of
know
it's for
this
his
character.
enjoyment.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sam, I think you saw some.
You saw William,
You saw William.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Yes.
Excuse me.
who looks strangely similar to Wilfred.
Not to give too much away about that at the moment.
Right on. Yes, I
yeah.
did get a sneak peek.
It's wonderful. So much knowledge.
I know. Yes. Thrilled to have you guys on here. It's very, very cool to learn about.
Oh, thanks. It's fun.
so-
This, yeah.
So moving on from the development cycle, how did the initial launch go? How was that?
Oh, it was a disaster. It was
really
not
from
too
day
good.
one?
from day one. It was a disaster. So like we were flying to Texas for PAX South, and the first review we saw was I think IGN Greece, who gave it a 9. We're like, oh, that's cool. Someone likes the game. And then like the second place we saw, I think maybe was like RPG Fan, and like they liked the game. I think it was like a 77 or something. And then like
Okay.
we touched down at our layover, and it was a shit show of people going like, this game is transphobic, and like it's
Whoa.
the main character is a self-insert of the author, and he's like a complete asshole, and the game is racist, and it was like immediately like a pretty major backlash against it.
So there's no like grace period whatsoever.
No.
Like, oh,
Oh,
people
wow.
watched
It's like
instant.
pretty much right out of the gate. It was
Jesus.
yeah, there
Yeah,
was
it was
doctored screenshots. There was like
Yeah, people doctored screenshots to sort of support
Yeah.
What the
their
fuck?
a
criticism
lot
of
of
it.
manufactured
That's
stuff
crazy.
I saw.
People tried to say that like the game contained references to pedophilia, and like it's because they mistook the character Carrie for the character Candy. And they were like really insistent. People also like data mined the game to get the script, so they were like trying to find things out of context to try and like say like, oh, and then look where the story goes. This
It
thing
was a race
happens,
to
and
find evidence of stuff. It was very.
That sounds
it was
exhausting.
terrible.
Yeah,
It
no,
was
it
really
sounds
bad.
awful.
Oh my god.
And it was awful because like there's no way to you've got no way to mitigate it. It's impossible.
Yeah, how do you come out in front of that? Yeah,
you can't.
There's really nothing that can be said that wouldn't have.
that would change people's minds because they've already like
Right.
made up from the. Oh, yikes.
Well, anything
Every-
we ever said made it worse.
Yes.
Anything
so?
ever. No, yes.
Well, there was a very famous example, or infamous, I suppose.
Well,
I
yeah. So
remember.
I had gone on this comedy podcast, The Dick Show, and
Ah,
I had said the thing I had said got completely misunderstood because I used a counterfactual. So basically, what I had said was video games are art, and art is allowed to challenge you. But if you're saying a game can't challenge you, you're the one who's making a video game, not a work of art. But because the way I said it required you to understand I was making a counterfactual statement, people just like said, "Oh, he says video games aren't art. He's so angry at how people didn't like his game, so he's
Yes.
declared the whole
Oh my
medium not
God.
art." And like you have to have the most bad faith read of what I said, and also ignore the thing I said before
Yeah.
and after.
Yeah.
It
Also,
was
they
so
were doing a
painful.
transcript of an audio podcast. It was very strange. Like,
Yeah, and I even also say the words I've prepared a bit because like the whole point of the show is you bring in like a rage and something that makes you angry, and it is like a
Sure.
sort of like performative over the top kind of thing. So yeah, it's just tricky because like you can't you're basically like once your game has been selected as something that people are allowed to hate, people are looking for the proof that it's hate worthy in everything you do. And it definitely was a very, very challenging experience.
I could imagine. Sorry that you
Yes.
guys had to go through that.
Well, thank you.
It was genuinely insane. There's more than a handful. There's many videos with that exact quote in the thumbnail and like a really stupid looking pissed off PNG like this guy, and they all have like so many views. I think people have made such an insane amount of money lying about your game. It's frankly sickening.
that's funny. I'll have to take your word for it. I had to make my YouTube think the game doesn't exist for me.
Just ignore any content related to
Good or
this.
bad, I had to say not
parameter.
interested. Not interested.
Yeah.
Recommend.
Jesus. I
Yeah,
mean,
under no circumstances do I ever let YouTube show me anything Y2K related.
I mean, fair enough.
Fuck that.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I'm sure there's great videos out there and not great videos, and I wish you guys the best, but I'm not watching.
There's great videos on both sides.
Yeah, I understand. I was going to ask, kind of following up, like, is there a way, like, you know, to spin this positively from having something that was so, like, in the spotlight for a moment? Do you feel like that has had any sort of positive impact in the long run where you are now?
I mean, yeah, I
with
mean,
the
it
game's
made
legacy?
It made it a meme and it made people pay attention to it. And then, you know, there's always going to be people who are going to look deeper in it. So like,
As one should.
the game did well for us, and you know we were happy with how it performed in the end. And we never had to get real jobs, which is cool. And you know, it's hard to know if had that controversy not happened, I bet you know it's impossible to know what good came from it because the way it played out is how it played out, and anything else is just like a sort of like a story you're making up in your head about it.
Totally.
So it's like, what use is that?
Certainly,
You kind of just have to forgive reality for what it is and move on.
Exactly. No, totally. It is what it is.
I mean, not to be too negative, but that is actually how I found out about Y2K was from the hate mob, and I thought, you know, I have to play it to see if this is genuinely what people are saying it is.
Well, it's weird though because there's a lot of bad games. Like most games are bad, so it's like it's one thing if we just made a bad game, but like most bad games don't get the vitriol that we got.
Right.
It was a unique condemnation we received.
No one's trying to kill the developer of Action 52.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting to have that target painted on your back, and
Yeah, it was
unfortunate
very
to have to
strange.
deal with. Yeah.
The hardest thing was, a lot of people that we knew saw the allegations against the game and they just believed that they were true. And it took
People
us
you
like a
knew.
people we knew in real life. It took us like a year to sort of clean everything up and explain it to people because most people just believed what they saw online.
On
So,
the internet. Oy,
and
oy.
remember, I went to an arts college. So like if all of a sudden it starts getting spread around that this guy's a transphobe, you have to imagine most people are going to be quite disturbed
Yeah.
by that.
Yikes.
Right.
So like that took a long time for me to sort of even be able to talk to people and sort of explain the situation. It was really, really weird.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
could only
even.
imagine.
I really can't even think of a moment in the script that would even
Oh, I'll
give that
explain
Read
it.
that way?
reading.
I'll
Yeah.
explain
Yeah.
it. So in the beginning of the game, it asked you what name your parents gave you because we wanted to make it clear that you weren't naming Alex, you were naming
Mm-hmm.
like you were giving us your name.
Right. The
And
player.
instead of saying what is your name, people might think you're naming the character. So we tried to find a
Yeah.
way to ask you what is you the player. But it didn't occur to us that people change their names and some people hate the names their parents gave them.
Hmm.
And people said that was us trying to dead name the
Oh my
player.
God. Okay.
Right. The most
Jesus.
bad faith interpretation
Yeah.
possible. Like willfully trying to have the most bad faith interpretation possible, essentially.
We changed that within 48 hours. Like we patched
Mm-hmm.
the game and we changed the wording on it, but it still wasn't enough for people. And of
Mm.
course, like then all of like the people we do business with start emailing us saying like, "Hey, we're hearing this stuff. Like, did you put transphobic stuff in your
Yeah.
game? Is there really
Oh
racist
no.
stuff in your game?"
Yeah.
And it's like, "Okay, no, there isn't. We have to clear this up with you." And like we had like merchandising deals and stuff that were in the works, and all of that got canceled
It
because
fell
of
through
the
because of that. Oh my
allegations.
God.
Yeah.
Damn. This is why you got to be responsible on the internet, listeners and viewers. Holy shit.
Yeah, when you see a video essay, immediately report it and get it deleted, regardless of what it's about or who it's by. Just delete all of them. Remove all of them from the face of the earth.
Ay ay ay.
Form your own opinion.
Exactly. That's really at the end of the day. We love saying it on the show, but truly form your own opinions. Get to the
Yeah,
truth.
listen to us and form your own opinion.
That was always a good idea too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
that is genuinely insane. So that's I know now you guys have merch. Is that all self-produced then?
We all self-produced. Yeah.
Damn.
Any chance there's going to be any new run for the Alex YIIK plushie or?
Maybe we had sold out of those like pretty quickly, like I think within like a week. But the problem is like there's a really costly upfront, like pre-production cost to like order
Mhm.
them. And we spent like so much money on voice acting. We got to recoup some of it before we can throw cash into
Sure,
something
sure.
like that.
Okay.
Voice
We'll hold
acting is
off.
like the most expensive part of making a game.
Really?
Well, when you have a small two-man team like us,
Yeah, when you don't have to hire the people
Sure.
jobs
Okay.
that you do already. Yeah.
I can
yeah,
understand that. Okay. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, they're worth every penny, but they are expensive.
Of course. Well, hey, actors got to live too, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
I wish we were smart enough to find a way to make what they make.
just gotta voice the characters.
Yeah.
Game
Right on.
Developers Union. So with all these initial controversies, issues, contrived or real, how much of that went into the development of 1.25 when you were making that version?
I mean, obviously, some of it was, we were frustrated with the scene that everyone hated so much, like the one with the golden alpaca, because like it wasn't, if you go and you read the original script I wrote, it's there's like stage direction in it, and like the way I visualized it when I wrote it obviously wasn't what ended up in the game. Like even like with like the
Yes.
lemonade sound effect and stuff, like we got the enemy sounds like a week before the game shipped.
Really?
So like there
Wow.
was really no time for us to even realize like the sort of like how it would read altogether because everything
Hmm.
was just being
Right,
thrown
because
thrown
you're like
in.
assigning sound effects to enemies, but you're not watching the scene, but you're fighting the
Yeah, you're not
enemies.
Sure, sure,
thinking
yeah.
about it in the context. So it's like even when people start talking, like saying like lemonade to me, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, like because I had not connected
Hmm.
that scene. Like the reason like the golden alpaca appears is like it's like Alex rewriting the scene that's about Rory to be about himself. He puts his non sequitur
Mm.
there as a way to sort of bring attention back to himself. But the other meaning is you could be you could be suffering this great tragedy, but the world doesn't care about you. Other things are moving on around you. Like you can be like Rory, sort of like having this depressing moment, but then something random can happen and it actually is completely unrelated to you. Um, and I feel like there's so many better ways that that scene could have been done. So like we wanted to see like, okay, how could we make this better? And then we did the 1.25 update. We remade that scene, and that gave rise to like the idea of like the character of Kasagi X and the sort of
Hmm.
1.25 short story. And once we did that, we kind of had a desire to make again. At that point, we were pretty depressed and we didn't really want to do this anymore. We were doing it for other people, like as a job,
Mm.
working on other people's games because you have to make a living.
Hmm.
And I think that sort of got us out of our funk, getting to make that. And then from there, we had the desire to make IV.
Okay. Yeah, that kind of answered the question. I was gonna ask, like, what brought you back to this project despite everything. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, really, we had this idea for the character of the nameless child, and making a sequel to Y2K and justifying a whole new game to sort of tell it is it's a it's a sort of unrealistic ask to try and get funding to like a follow up to a game that like was so like critically hated.
Hmm.
So we're like, well, we could just put it in the game. We could just make it because we want to make it and patch it in. And as we started doing it, and it really started to gain potential, and we realized ways that we could remake scenes and reimagine stuff, then we were like, okay, well, a definitive edition of the game could be something that we could sell. That is something that,
Yeah.
especially if we gave it away for free to people who own it already.
Oh
Yes, I
yeah.
mean, it is something really outstanding. I think with the way that you changed it. Not to get, well, I guess we could start getting a little bit further ahead,
Yeah. No, totally.
but
We're moving along. Yeah.
yeah. But even just the Nameless Psychosis demo, the changes to the visuals, the animations, the new characters, the new environments, the new battle system, especially, it's not even remotely the same game as it used to be. And I think that both players who enjoyed the original game, 1.25, and just enjoy, like, for example, just a normal like Persona fan, for example, would see this and want to pick it up and give it a try and maybe find a new favorite.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you think that. I
It's very
appreciate it.
good. It's very good. Regarding your inspirations, like with other RPGs you played growing up or experienced, was there anything in particular that like you wanted to avoid, like a genre trope or a mechanic within the genre that you're like, I don't really feel like including this because I don't enjoy it or I think it could be done better. Was there anything like that with the original or moving forward into 1.25 and 1.5?
I don't think so. I don't think we think in that sort of like,
I will say
mm,
with IV, I wanted the battle mode to be a battle mode that was unlike other RPGs, not because I mostly just because my favorite RPGs all have like something unique about their
Like a
battle
quirk
systems.
in the
Mm-hmm.
battle system, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, right on.
And I didn't want to like just copy someone else's battle system.
yeah, just make Paper Mario or
Yeah, like
Right.
it's done too often now, and I feel like the whole point of the genre is to experiment with the battle system.
Hmm.
Yes,
Yeah,
especially with an
certainly.
RPG.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the issue with turn-based RPGs in particular is that battles tend to be more of a slog to get to more of the story. They're not really an enjoyable part, especially like in the SNES, PlayStation 1 era.
yeah. I mean, we also definitely wanted to try and tell more story in the battle system as well. We wanted to express the characters more through it.
Yeah, we definitely found good ways of tying story and battle together this time around.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of that, Nick? Since you have more experience with the original work than I do.
Well, I can only imagine because as it is, I only have the Nameless Psychosis demo to go off of. But if you don't mind, could you give an example of tying the story and battle together? Is there like a unique battle system or unique scene, perhaps, or boss fight or anything like that?
Well, one thing I can say is I think the new Yuzu battle, um, I think that I think we found some cool ways of making that feel like um, just a little bit more like the story is continuing in the battle, even just like through visual
Mm,
cues. But like I'm really referring to
I see.
things like the way that the characters um, are brought in and out of the Iron Maidens when they're killed. This way that
Mm-hmm.
they're summoned in by the angels that appear. All that stuff is part of the story as well.
Right.
And
You've got
and
that.
like
Michael, for example, will like pull out a gun now under certain conditions in battle.
Yes.
but only if all of the other characters are unconscious.
Okay.
Because if anyone is still alive, Michael does not pull out the gun.
This is all very intriguing to me as someone who's only experienced
Michael's
the
the key
Nameless
to all this,
Psychosis
Sam.
demo.
That's true.
Huh.
Michael is the new main character.
Oh.
That's actually that's great for me. He was my favorite character. He's the one I want to see the most of when I
He has
played
a
the game
ton of new
originally.
stuff. Michael's
That's great.
part's huge.
That's perfect. Michael and the camera. I definitely want to see a lot of them.
You'll see a ton.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was like, I know what he's talking. Right on. Right on. Yeah.
So, lastly, for this, what are your hopes and dreams for Y2K?
Sleep, restoration, forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
and world peace.
There you go.
Wow.
Do you feel like, I mean, we kind of touched upon this earlier with your thoughts on like Alex's character and when the game was released, but do you feel like the scene now, like the indie scene now, or just the indie RPG scene right now, is more in a space to, I don't know, digest this better or receive it in a less
Um,
vitriolic way?
um, I'm gonna get in so much trouble for saying this. The younger audience is more capable. Gen Z, for some reason, gets it. Like it resonates more with people who are part of Gen Z, and people who are millennials tend to hate it. So we
Mm,
skipped a generation of our audience by
There's some sort
accident.
of psychology there, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
the
I don't
mere
dare analyze it, but it
Mhm.
does be the case.
yeah.
I'm inclined I'm inclined to agree with you guys. From what I've seen, yeah, I was looking at the Steam page today and the reviews and
Yeah,
yeah, it's getting warmly received in a way.
yeah.
I
We're at
feel.
very positive,
Yeah,
93% very
yeah.
positive.
So kudos to you guys there. But hopefully those hopes and dreams get fulfilled as we
Be
move
nice.
forward. Yeah.
I'll take half of them. I don't care
Hey,
which half, just
yeah,
half.
yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I hope people give it a try,
Mhm.
you know, and
They certainly should. As someone who had only heard about the initial response and then playing through this demo, yeah, built up a lot of intrigue. And yeah, it's such a love letter to things that I like. So it's like, okay, this is
I'm
very
glad to hear.
very cool to see. Yeah.
I will say that even if you don't like the story, it's told much better now.
Okay.
Yes, even if you hated the original story, it's
Yeah,
at least better. It's a better version of the story
you
you
should
hate.
see it in full motion. If
Yeah,
you,
find new reasons to hate it by playing it again and
Yeah,
buying it for a
perfect.
friend.
Yes. Experience vibrating with motion anew.
There you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Nick, do you wanna ask him your spoiler zone questions? I suppose. We can move
Yes.
into those
My
ones.
my self-indulgent personal questions.
That's what the show is for.
Exactly. My captive audience here. So, Andrew and Brian, as composer and artist, what are your personal favorite song and design from the game?
My favorite design from the game is definitely Nameless Child now. And then my favorite song from the game is "Let's Kiss Like Dreamers," which is an IV song.
Yes, I've heard it very many times. It's very, very good.
Thank you.
I would also probably have to go with Let's Kiss Like Dreamers. That's a good song. Designs are hard for me to pick. I just don't know if I can do it. It's probably something new. And it's probably something that hasn't been seen.
We've
But
shown a lot, but we've barely shown anything.
it's true. I'd like to like tell people to have reasonable expectations, but they probably shouldn't because there's an
There's a lot.
unreasonable amount of new stuff.
It
I
was
mean,
it was on it was
But
mentally unwell what we did to ourselves with
I
how
will.
much we made.
I think I like Alex honestly as a design.
really,
Yeah.
just as is, just default
Yeah,
Alex.
there's something about him that like seems to stick with people. So I think he might be a good character design.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's,
like punished Alex with the long hair chained up.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's with that guy? What's his deal?
I
Good
wonder.
question.
Reminds me of that Prometheus guy with the crow and everything.
Nah,
Probably doesn't mean anything.
it's a mistake. It's a coincidence.
Yeah, I don't know. These guys put a lot of mistakes in their writing that make me
If I've
think.
learned anything from
Weird.
people on the internet, it's that everything in the game is a coincidence and it probably doesn't mean anything. So,
Yes. Everything that's interesting is a mistake, and everything I don't like is intentional and made to hurt me.
yeah.
Be a doctor.
Okay, now, considering games as a medium, you guys are developers, but with Y2K in particular, and I suppose with Two Brothers as well, what do you feel like you were able to do storytelling with the games that you couldn't have done with, say, a novel or a film? Because I know there's the Deviant Perspective 1 and 2 novellas that do tell the story within the world of Y2K, but everything in I.V is either brand new, utilizing that content, or the old content recontextualized or redone in this new way. So
Well,
what do you...
I mean, Alex's character is all about, video games and pop culture. So because like the game is like, we see it as like a sort of digitized version of his soul. It makes the most sense for it to be told in a video game. Alex makes sense encapsulated in a video game
as a video game character. Yeah, totally.
as a video game
Ah,
character
okay.
expressed that way.
Yeah.
And he sees his life as a video game, so it makes sense for his life to be portrayed that way. That wouldn't quite work so well if it was like it would be weird if you try to do that in like a novel, like a character who thinks of his life as a novel and then is in a novel. I mean, there's something fundamentally cornier about that. I don't know why, but it seems cornier to me.
It would be strange, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I also just think that no one reads novels, so it makes sense to make a video game.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Every time I'm reading one, my eyes are bleeding and I'm trying to tear up my skin. Such a
I've tricked
painful
so many
experience.
people into reading. I don't know how I did it.
Yeah, if anyone joins the YIIK Chord server, check out the On as a Man at the Center thread. You'll be shocked at the discussion in there. A one-man discussion going for posts and posts.
Yes, I'm just having a.
I think what we need is like a book reader that just is like the RPG text box where you just read like a couple lines at a time and press A.
Yeah, condense everything into that. Yeah.
Yeah, save your data.
Yeah, maybe that's
perfect.
how people need to read now.
Yeah, it would be more engaging, I'm sure.
Just have some Family Guy in the corner. It'll work out. I was actually going to ask, also related to that. So with Alex being so deeply tied to video games, going back to the Deviant Perspective, is that why he's not featured in the Deviant Perspective novella sections?
It's one is it's a desire. So like Y2K is written in Alex's voice because he's the sort of he's the master of ceremonies. So he's presenting the whole game to you through his lens of how he views the world. And there was a catharsis for exploring the themes of Y2K without Alex explicitly when I wrote the first story, The Wrong Soul Requiem. And I had so much fun doing it that way that when I started a second one, because we sell a hardcover book of the first Deviation Perspective, and
Yes.
they do really well. Like we move like for a hardcover book, and we sell like 10 to 15 a month. That's pretty good. And I was like, okay, well, I should do something longer, something with a bit more to it. So I wanted to find a different voice that was unlike what I wrote, because I like writing in character, right? So I wrote Y2K in the character of Alex. I wrote Deviation Perspective in a sort of a different voice, and then Honest Man at the Center. I was looking for something else. I wanted something that was looser, a little bit more mentally unwell, more disorganized in how it was presented. I was looking to blur the lines between who actually is telling the story and who the story is about, and I wanted it to be able to sort of move between it, kind of like a drug trip. And for that reason, because Alex has this really fixed voice, if he were to appear, then it would start to corrupt the story, and it would sort of take the enjoyment out of it from me. And why I do it.
Sucks the joy out of any piece of media he's in. Okay,
Very cool.
Makes sense, yeah. And then also regarding that, since I.V is also from these other characters' points of view, and even in 1.25 with the new Golden Alpaca scene, those scenes are the ones that break from the standard like PS1 kind of visual novel aesthetic and have like the full cutscenes, the full scenes. They're much more dynamic, and those are the only times that we're not seeing everything from Alex's point of view. Was that intentional?
Yeah, absolutely. So like
saying it out loud sounds very stupid.
The idea was so like the Golden Alpaca is a character from the Kasagi X cinematic universe. This was like, so like the character Kasagi X is a new character who's like this auteur filmmaker, and there's like it's questionable whether or not he's actually an auteur or if that's just not what weebs have labeled him, and if he actually just isn't just like a very questionable pervert making these movies. And the idea is, that's something that Alex has consumed as a young person. Like it influenced his worldview. So like when there's this sort of break in reality, it's a rule in Y2K for Alex. When reality is broken, there's references from things that help him cope, sort of comes in to sort of shelter him from it. So like whenever like Murakami quotes are used in the game, that's always like a sort of like self-soothing that Alex is doing. And so when it breaks perspective, it's still tied to Alex in some way. It's something that Alex holds dear, but it's something outside of him that he's consumed, sort of taking over, taking his perspective and also the audience's perspective and shifting it.
Going off of that also, based on the Nameless Psychosis demo, it seems like a lot of the direction for the new cutscenes, the new visuals, takes a lot from Suda51, in particular the kind of film window style in a silver case, or the heavy like solid colors and solid text in Killer 7 and Quentin Tarantino. Were there any other particular developers or directors that have really inspired the new visuals for Y2K, or are those two way off as well?
Well, we love Quentin Tarantino and Suda51. I don't think we were explicitly thinking about their work. I think there's a movie called Branded to Kill. Basically, the Japanese and French New Wave cinema was what inspired the cutscenes for IV. So like Olivier Assayas, who's the director of Irma Vep, his style had a big influence on me. I definitely liked drawing from him. There's a movie called Contempt, which is a French movie. I think we were drawing on that in some ways. But for the most part, like, Brian and I, we don't like go and study how a film shoots a certain type of scene and then try and recreate it. It's like we digest all of these things we like, and then our output is related to our interests. So like we're definitely not the type of people who are studying how a specific master does something and then laboriously recreating it through like a sort of like attempt at aping their technique.
Right.
Brian,
do you have anything else you'd want to add to that?
Not really. You said it pretty well as far as influences go. Like on top of that, I've also always looked at like manga artists, especially Osamu Tezuka.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and obviously Hideo Kojima, especially MGS.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Hideo Kojima is obviously like the biggest influence on everything we do.
Really?
Like we can't. Yeah, he's amazing. He's
We might not be making the same kinds of games, but it's definitely.
yeah,
I think you're sort of similar approaches with the
yeah.
medium and the
I mean, I
subversive
think
nature of what you do. Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 2 burrowed its way into our brains when we were children, and it has not let us go.
I mean, that's a great one to
That-
keep up there. Yeah.
You see, that actually directly leads into my next question. Do you feel like, well, I suppose outside of Kojima and Metal Gear Solid 2, there are any developers that you can say have effectively utilized a postmodern narrative in a video game that you can point to and say that it was either enjoyable or well done or even just exists?
Yeah. Hideo Kojima obviously is he's the best example of it. In some ways, Tetsuya Nomura from Square Enix with the Kingdom Hearts games, like
Really?
I mean, like you see it with even just how the Disney stuff is used. Like there's definitely elements of a big thing with so like postmodernism is it all has to do with meta narrative and interpretation. But then within this idea of meta narrative, there's also this idea of mixing and matching stories that people know. So like you see this in a lot where someone takes like an existing story and they deconstruct it by telling it in a different way. And they try and get to the original narrative that existed, and they try and tell you something about the culture that produced it by doing it in a different way. But a technique that's come out of that is this idea of the crossover. So if you look at like what Neil Gaiman's writing, Neil Gaiman is definitely like a sort of like pop postmodernist in his work, where he takes like all the gods, and all the gods really exist in his stories, and they're all people, and they all have agency, and but that's a mashup story. That's pastiche. That's this idea of taking different narratives and combining them together. And you do see a version of that in Kingdom Hearts.
Totally. Yeah.
Yes. When Pete kicks me in the rear, it's just like when Alex is in the elevator.
I mean, it's also like this hilarious it's like a theme park, right? Kingdom Hearts. And what's
Yeah.
more postmodern than making a fake city that is to show you these like works of like consumerism.
Yeah, giant
And they make
monuments to
it good.
Disney.
And they make it
Yeah.
good. How do they do that?
And they make it good.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I do like 2 a lot, and Birth by Sleep.
2 is great. 2 is awesome.
3 was all right.
It was okay. Yeah.
2's the one though.
2 is the one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Certainly. Right on. All right, Nick, you got your final questions before we move on to our community
Yes.
Q&A. I know it's a little late for you guys since you're on East
It's okay.
Coast time,
That's
so we
fine.
won't try to.
That's
Fine.
Perfect. Honestly, if I could, I would keep you here for 4 more hours or 5. But yes, although so iPoint V is a passion project, a free update. If there is a positive reception, or even it generates more sales for Y2K, would there be any chance of more Y2K, like a Y2K2? Or any sort of new Y2K media outside of On as a Man at the Center being released?
We have toyed with the idea of making like a 25-minute animated like OVA or something
Oh,
of
Rad.
doing like
Yeah.
maybe like a Y2K sequel in that form or something. Because I definitely like making we like making cutscenes a lot. It's a lot of fun to do, and I think we could do more with that style if we didn't have to make a game around it. Like if we could just make animation, but that it's hard to know if that would ever happen. But if IV did well and the fan base continued to grow, I think I would be more inclined to try something like that than making a new game right away. But
Okay.
maybe
Like, I
in
would
like
never
10
say-
years, I would never say never.
Yeah, I would never say no to a new game. I want to make at least probably 2 more games before I go back.
Yeah, something different. Like we're already working on our next game, and I'm so much more excited about it than anything we've ever done.
Ooh.
And
exciting.
like it's the most authentic to our own personal interests and our sort of like development goals, like the type of stuff we've always wanted to do. Like we're finally able to
Yeah.
pull it off now.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you tell us anything at all about that?
Made in the Unreal Engine.
Okay. All right.
and it has a really striking visual style. And Brian knocked it out of the park. If you think Y2K looks cool, you ain't seen shit.
Oh shit.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's about as much as I knew about No More Heroes 3 when they announced that, so that's a good sign.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, we don't have a logo appearing, but pretend that's what you saw.
There you go. Yeah.
You said there is a logo?
No, there's no logo.
No logo yet. No logo yet.
Fuck!
Kind of
that's fine.
tangentially. How is I mean, we've had other devs on the show and they shared their thoughts on working with Unity as an engine. Was that a engine you'd recommend? Was there any like big headaches from doing it, or was it like pretty smooth sailing? Just from the get-go with that.
With you cut out for me for a second, but
Developing
Unity.
in Unity. Yeah.
Unity. So like ultimately, I wouldn't not recommend it. Like I do. I don't know. I've abused the hell out of Unity working on Y2K.
I mean, good. Put it through
Like
its paces, yeah.
It's easy enough to do stuff like, oh, make my own animation system and make my own cutscene editor. And then at the time, like we needed some of those things because they didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think a lot of that stuff has been added in some form or another in the latest versions, but I'm like all the way behind. Like,
Sure.
Yeah, because we're stuck in the version we released in.
Oh, I could imagine, yeah.
Yeah, we like Unreal better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
I mean, there's like pros and cons to each of them. Like Unreal has like longer compile times,
Mm-hmm.
but that's more time to work out while you're compiling, I guess.
There you
Yeah.
go, yeah.
Forces you to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Can't just hit play.
Right.
Fair enough. Well,
We're
that answers my
pretty dumb.
question there, yeah.
And since you guys are laying all your cards on the table, you don't want to be, as you said, a David Lynch or a Yoko Taro. How would one go about getting the Ultima Alex ending or the Old Frankton ending or any of those crazy cut content endings?
I don't know anything about that, but if you were looking for the third ending, you'd have to look for the pattern of the chaos. But for some reason, no one else can see it.
Mm. There you go,
No,
Nick.
worth a shot.
There you go, Nick. All right. Well, we're going to move on to our community Q&A, kind of close it out with some questions from our wonderful community. And I guess I'll start. Our first question comes in from Cold Steak, a fellow developer. He asks, will we be able to access the original version of Y2K after the 1.5 update?
Yeah, it's going to be a branch on Steam, and it'll be on itch. The console versions are going to be updated, so you can't do it on consoles. But you can play the old battle mode, but you can't like turn off like the new cutscenes or
content.
disable
Yeah.
skipping Nameless Child or anything. That'd be too hard.
Mhm.
But on PC and Mac, you'll be able to just change branches on Steam.
So going off that, does that mean that like the Nameless Crow, or sorry, the Handsome Crow and the Nameless Child have their own like battle mini games and everything that have to be put into the game?
No comment.
All right, right on. Okay. Do you want to take the next one, Nick, or shall I?
Yeah, sure. Another other developer, Mascot, a big RPG Maker fan, says, if you could do anything differently, what would you have done? Which I think
Big.
kind of.
We've sort of answered that through
There was this like
interview.
in 2006, there was this one Tuesday where I was given the opportunity to go to a concert and I skipped it. If I go back in time and I've gone to that concert with my cousin, I would have done that.
Nice.
I feel that. I feel like missed out on concerts, like that haunts me sometimes.
Yeah.
Like those memories, like I could have
been
seen
there.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's always tough. As far as the game goes, if I could do it all over again, I would rewrite the game, but with less code.
Oh, okay. I feel like that's just a lesson you'd kind of
Yeah.
learn over time. Right on.
Reduce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dr. Brown, he's got his doctorate for a reason.
Does he?
I don't think that
Yeah.
is a doctor.
Honorary, I think.
All right, and coming up next from DDD Pizzaron, longtime fan and listener, he says or asks, "How do you feel about the Alex YIIK meme? Do you have a favorite Y2K meme?"
The meme is good. The meme is good. You want your character to be recognizable. You want people to in we own a specific type of white guy because of Alex. Like
Yeah,
there's a specific type of
certainly.
white guy that's just we control them. We have their souls. We can do a lot with that. But as for the favorite, yeah, there's like somebody did like Alex doing the Fortnite dances, and I think that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, when can we expect Alex in Fortnite?
Mm,
Hit
That's a
us up.
question from me.
Smash.
Hit us up, ask us. We're
Yeah,
I
down.
Epic Games, if you're listening, we have the next collab
Yeah.
right here. Yeah.
Yeah, multiverses. This is gonna bring that tired old game into the spotlight.
There you go.
Yeah, actually, Alex is in actually a Smash clone, isn't he?
Is he?
At
He's
least
in like
one.
yeah, he's in like some indie
Mm,
Smash game.
yes,
Yeah,
Wow.
I wish I could remember the name of it. I think it's called Cross Impact.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Dallin Larson Games, I think, or at
Wow.
least that was the company. Yeah,
Well, there you go.
check that out.
More crossovers, yeah. Right
Do
on.
you ever want to use LP toss on I don't know, Celeste or something? I assume.
Yeah,
There's your opportunity.
Yeah. A Hyperlight Drifter or someone in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Okay.
Let's see. From Raccoons, what jobs did you have before YIIK, and are there any funny stories from your pre-YIIK life?
Let me see. I used to do augmented reality stuff for magazines typically.
Okay.
Like put your iPhone at the paper, 3D model comes up,
Pops
does
up.
some stupid
Okay.
stuff. Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, the Hatsune Miku Domino's box. Yeah, I know about that. Yeah, now you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
I was a music teacher, and I also, yeah, I was a
Very
music
nice.
teacher.
Yeah.
And in terms of funny stories, there are, but I can't, I could not say any of them on here without you guys getting in trouble.
No,
So,
no worries, no worries.
That's fine.
All right. Colonel Fancy, they ask favorite challenges regarding balancing enemy difficulty.
Ooh, that's always like a weird number juggling thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I was gonna ask
I
like
used to
in
believe,
general. Yeah.
for some reason, something got into my head that tiny numbers were like easier and better and more impactful. I don't think I believe that anymore.
Not
I think
anymore.
I, I think it can sustain a game like Paper Mario, which has two party members and isn't very long. I think trying to
That
put
was
it into
yeah.
Y2K never quite worked. Part of it is because I got the wrong numbers in, and we changed a lot of things, and mistakes were made. Like a version of it could be made to work.
I think the
Yeah.
was the question about challenge or things we liked about it. What was the
Your
question?
favorite challenges.
Balancing
Yeah.
the difficulty of enemies.
I loved
Fights in
making
particular.
the new mine dungeon and making how that progress in there would impact the balance and finding a way to tie that to exploration gameplay. The new
Yes.
mine dungeon is like it's like this sort of like mini open map, and
Excuse me.
you can find a lot of you can find new skills inside of that dungeon. And so it was cool finding ways to say like, well, we don't want this player to get this skill too early. How do we make sure that like that's balanced with your progress in the game's narrative? So that was a fun challenge.
Right. It's always hard with an RPG because you have to reward the player from fighting enemies by making them stronger.
Yeah.
But then the player is stronger, so then challenges become easier. Obviously, the easiest thing would be to get rid of the leveling up, but then it's not the combat simulation that you're trying to make it.
Yeah.
Right. You can have like a Final Fantasy VIII situation.
Yeah.
Well, even that, I don't know. Yeah, it's a hard problem, like, and it's self-inflicted.
Yeah. Okay, I could only imagine.
Actually, yes. So, kind of leading into that a little bit, if you had to pick one in particular, what new feature or improvements in YIIK are you most proud of, going from release to the upcoming I.V?
I'm most proud of the Nameless Child quest because it's very inventive, I think, and it's a very nice complementary story to the one that we already told. And that let us really think outside the box and show a different side of ourselves that we didn't get to show with 1.0.
Yeah. I mean, I want to say cutscenes because they're so much better and they do a better job of presenting stuff to the player. So, but I'm cheating and I'm not saying that. I'm saying the battle mode, because of how radically it changes the game and breathes new life into it. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yes. The
probably
dark game was fun. I did like it.
especially with no loading times going into battle. It's like it makes it such a smooth experience compared to
Mm,
the original.
okay.
Yes. And that
Nice.
new character Yokasta. Wow, what a babe. Something about that name though. So familiar.
Curious
It doesn't
name.
probably doesn't mean anything.
It's a coincidence.
Yeah, weird coincidence.
My unconscious told me to name her that. I don't know why.
Moving on, that one bun. They ask, have you read the legendary novel-length Steam review of Y2K? And if so, did you take anything from it?
No, I didn't read it.
Probably not.
It's fair. It was shared amongst our Discord a few weeks back. I was shocked. I could not get
It
through
is-
all of it. It's so long.
It was amazing. It was like it was like a beautiful schizo post. Full
Does
of,
it
like,
have a
random
recommend on it?
tangents. A recommend?
Does it say recommend or not recommend?
Oh, it's in defense of the game.
It is
was
in defense of the game,
It
yeah.
came out very soon after the initial release.
Mm.
It's very pro Y2K.
Yes.
Well, that's neat.
That's cool.
It's somewhat impenetrable from just from like a scale and scope size of a review.
It's
but
huge.
It was
Wow.
it was an entertaining read. What I did
Yeah,
get
it's kind of
through.
like it's very manifesto-like. It's great.
Nice.
I'm
Nice.
glad that somebody took the time to write it.
Onism posting on Steam.
Yeah, literally something you would find scrawled in like the outhouse where someone locked themselves in and died. It's awesome. From Sneeze, who I believe you guys will recognize from your own server, they say a lot of my favorite games can be colloquially described as pretentious. Do you think that the controversial and mimetic reception of Y2K influenced a cultural shift in indie games? In other words, do you think people are afraid to appear pretentious? And do you ever find yourself trying to avoid this perception in your own work?
I don't. I'm gonna be honest. I checked out of a lot of the gaming culture stuff after we faced our backlash, because I started to just notice how cruel people can be,
Yeah.
and it can be hard to see like I saw like there was a game that like a mascot horror game that came out not that long ago, and I just saw people were just like railing on the people who made it, and I just like caught it out of the corner of my eye, because I don't use Reddit or Twitter or any of those platforms,
Good.
but I have
Healthy.
someone who shares with me screenshots of things that are related, like just like here's some important stuff you should know about, and I was just like, man, like I feel like people have gotten a lot meaner, and people will individually pick out developers from games and scapegoat them in a really disturbing way that definitely didn't seem to be there in the past. And I think I don't think most people are changing their behavior because of that, because I think most people have yet to realize it can happen to anyone. Most people still think it's like a justified thing when it happens, because it's fun. It's fun to dunk on people,
To pile on,
and it's
yeah.
fun to scapegoat. Yeah, it's human nature.
Yeah. It's
And-
weird. It's like first names are getting brought in, last names are getting brought in. It's like very strange.
Yeah,
It's
instead
like-
of just
so
like
personal,
saying this
yeah,
game is
Jesus.
bad,
Very
or
zealous.
so like as for like developers trying to not appear pretentious, like it's hard to say, but like I cannot stress enough, everyone should just be yourself, because the character you're going to try and play is going to be pretentious just by fucking definition. Like you're not going to be interesting, you're not going to be mysterious, you're not going to hide your weird quirks by putting a character on. It's not going to work. And everyone that you think it works for currently, with the exception of David Lynch and Yoko Taro, it's going to fail for them one day. So don't imitate it. Be yourself, please.
I appreciate that. I'm all for genuine, just unabashed you. You know, just
Yeah.
Don't be afraid.
Believe
to
in
express.
yourself or die.
Also,
Well, I mean, you don't have an option, right? Like you can't be somebody else, because even if you're trying to pretend to be somebody else, you're still you. It's annoying. It's just the way. It's
Yeah.
reality, though.
Inescapable. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. At the end of the day, this is what you look at in the mirror. Can't get away from it.
And if you're trying to be somebody new, it's still your interpretation of this new guy. It came from you.
Mm-hmm.
You're fucked. Don't try.
Yeah, by the way, you're fucked. Ants asks, did you know that YIIK backwards is key? Will Alex be in the next Kingdom Hearts game?
I did not know that actually, because I never bothered to flip the letters around.
Well, now you do know.
Yeah. Will Alex be? Well, we are going to be acquired by Disney soon, so it's
Yeah,
possible.
Okay,
Good
so
to
that's the
know.
next
That could
project.
happen.
Nice.
Kingdom Hearts 4 will have a Y2K world.
Alex is a lovable character with appeal,
Yeah.
so Disney wants him.
Disney
He'll
wants
be
him.
appearing on Disney Plus as a new 8-season long miniseries.
Yeah, it's actually just going to be a let's play of Y2K on Disney Plus.
Let's play.
Yeah. It's going to be all your favorite Disney stars playing Y2K, talking about how much they love
There
it.
you go.
Your favorite Disney princess, Black Widow. It's going to be episode 1.
Yeah.
Scarlett Johansson plays Y2K. Yeah, excellent. All right.
Let's see. From Sheepover, well, we already kind of asked this. What's your biggest regret in real life? And what do you think Alex's best and worst quality is?
Alex's best quality is his facial hair genetics.
He does have a glorious.
That's a
glorious
dense beard.
Also,
You can
his
hide a
worst
lot.
quality.
Yeah. Yeah. His worst quality is his repressed homosexuality.
Ah, I knew it.
There you go.
That scene with Rory, I knew that was real.
And then our final question coming in from our producer, who's not present, Goon Lagoon. He asks, what actor would be the perfect parallel Alex? And to follow up, what does Alex's vinyl collection look like?
Ooh.
For the eventual Y2K film, you know, who are we casting?
Yeah. I mean, he's too old now, but obviously Michael Cera, if you put a prosthetic beard on him, would have been hilarious.
Yeah, Scott Pilgrim all over again.
Yeah. As for his vinyl collection, I mean, like, all you really have to do is go into an Urban Outfitters in 2010 and look at all of the boomer stuff they were like branding as cool, and that's basically his collection.
So not like contemporary indie artists back then, but like
Oh no, yeah, because the whole thing about being a hipster was like it had to be vintage. So if it wasn't like
retro
something you could have
obsession, yeah.
pilfered from your dad's collection, it wasn't really
okay.
hip.
I see. I have a feeling he might have been like a big Morrissey fan.
Yeah, I could see
That's
that.
Yeah.
That's actually, that's why he wears his dad's clothes. He doesn't really care for the guy in any way, obviously. He just wanted that aesthetic.
Exactly.
Wow. There you go. And that brings us to the end of our community questions and truly the end of the interview. And gentlemen, thank you again so much for coming on. This has been a big pleasure.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you for having us. It was very fun.
Yeah, it was cool.
Thank you. As we do our outro, you know, listeners, viewers, you know where to find Nick and I. We're on social media. I'm at the Super Sammycom on Twitter. He's at Somebody Stop Me. We will leave all the links down below. Gentlemen, are there any... I know we talked about how you don't use really Instagram or Twitter or Reddit or anything like that. Are there any pages viewers, listeners should follow if they're interested in looking up the game? Obviously, wishlist on Steam, or play the demo right now.
Yeah, play Nameless Psychosis on Steam. Follow ACK Studios on Twitter.
There you go.
ACKK Studios. Join the YIIK Cord. You can talk to me and Brian directly there. We hang out there pretty frequently. Sometimes we'll be in the VCs.
Nice.
And IV is, we are pretty much done. We're just finishing up the PS4 version. That's the last thing we have to do. And then, we're hoping to get that done within the next couple days. But
Really?
then it's up to the publisher to, set a release date. But our work is almost done.
There you go.
So, it's going to be soon.
Yeah.
Very great to hear.
Thanks.
Excellent.
All right, later.
Yes, and until next time, I suppose, keep on gaming, treat each other well, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, hang on. We gotta do the... And now...
And now...
Now we see.
Now I've seen the light. I've seen the light of
Yeah.
Y2K.
You've been enlightened.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. This was a pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
For real.
Yeah.